The Christmas Carol music stopped dead. My 14-year-old daughter Lily stood frozen, clutching her homemade gift, tears welling in her eyes. "You're not my granddaughter. Get out of my house," my mother Margaret hissed, loud enough for everyone to hear. The room fell silent. My husband Jason squeezed my hand in warning, but it was too late. Something inside me shattered as I watched Lily run out sobbing. That night, after sending one message that would change everything, I watched my phone explode with her panicked calls. "You'd better start praying, Mother." I never planned to be a mother at 24. Life had other ideas when my best friend Diana collapsed at my apartment during our weekly movie night. The aneurysm took her within hours, leaving behind her 4-year-old daughter Lily and no immediate family to care for her. Diana and I had been inseparable since freshman year of college, and she'd named me as guardian in her will after her parents passed away the year before. "I can't do this," I told my boyfriend Jason that night at the hospital. "I'm not ready to be someone's mother." He held my hand firmly. "Fanny, you've been more of an aunt to that little girl than anyone else in her life. Diana trusted you for a reason." The adoption process was grueling. As a young interior designer just starting my business, the social workers questioned whether I had the stability to raise a child. Jason proposed during this period, not just because we were in love, but to show the courts we could provide a proper family environment. We were married 3 months later in a small ceremony, with Lily as our flower girl. My mother Margaret was a different story entirely. "You're throwing away your youth and your career," she said over lunch at her country club, when I told her about the adoption plans. "This child isn't your responsibility, Fanny. There are services for these situations." Her words stung like a slap. "Her name is Lily, Mom. She's not a situation. She's a little girl who just lost her mother." Margaret set down her fork with surgical precision. "Don't expect me to play grandmother to some stranger's child. The Harrington name means something in this town. We have standards to uphold." The Harrington name. That had always been her obsession, our family's social standing in Westbrook, Connecticut, where my mother reigned over charity boards and garden parties. My father had built a successful investment firm before his death 10 years ago, leaving my mother with enough money and status to become even more concerned with appearances. Despite her initial resistance, my mother seemed to soften once the adoption was finalized. She sent birthday cards, invited us to family events, and occasionally asked about Lily's schooling. I wanted to believe she had accepted my daughter, desperate to maintain what family harmony we had left. "Grandma Margaret sent this for you," I'd tell Lily, presenting a perfectly wrapped gift that was always slightly impersonal educational books, classical music collections, proper dresses that were always a size too large, as if expecting her to grow into them. Lily, with her heart bigger than any child I'd known, always received these gifts with genuine gratitude. "I'll write her a thank you note right away," she would say, carefully selecting stationery and practicing her handwriting. This Christmas, Lily had spent weeks crafting something special for her grandmother, a handmade family history book with carefully researched Harrington ancestry, complete with photographs she had scanned and restored, and spaces left for Margaret's own stories and memories. "Do you think she'll like it?" Lily asked as we pulled into the circular driveway of my mother's colonial mansion for the annual family Christmas dinner. The house was impeccably decorated with tasteful white lights and classic greenery. "She'll love it," I assured her, silently praying it was true. "You put so much thought into it." The gathering started pleasantly enough. My brother Thomas and his wife Ellen were there with their twins. My sister Bethany arrived with her new husband Parker and their 8-month-old baby girl. Cousins, aunts, and uncles filled the house with conversation and laughter. Lily stayed close to Jason and me at first, nervously clutching her carefully wrapped present. My mother greeted her with a brief pat on the shoulder, not the warm hug she gave my nieces and nephews, but Lily didn't seem to notice or mind. After dinner, we gathered in the living room for the gift exchange. When it was Lily's turn to give her present, she approached my mother with a hopeful smile. "I made this for you, Grandma Margaret," she said, offering the package wrapped in decorated paper. My mother took another sip of her third wine of the evening before accepting it. As she unwrapped it, her expression darkened. "What is this supposed to be?" she asked, flipping through the pages with growing disdain. "It's our family history," Lily explained eagerly. "I researched all about the Harringtons back to 1870, too, when they first came to Connecticut. There are pages for you to write your memories, too. That's when it happened." My mother closed the book sharply and fixed Lily with an icy stare. "This isn't your family history," she said. "You're not a Harrington. You're not my granddaughter. Get out of my house." The Christmas music playing softly in the background suddenly seemed deafening in the silence that followed. Lily's face crumpled as tears spilled down her cheeks. Before I could reach her, she turned and fled from the room. "How dare you?" I whispered, rising to my feet. "Fanny, don't make a scene," my mother warned, already composing herself as if nothing had happened. I ran after Lily, finding her sobbing in the coat closet by the front door. Jason was already there, kneeling beside her. "I need to get Lily's coat," I told Jason. "We're leaving." While Jason took Lily to the car, I returned to the living room long enough to inform everyone we were going home. My siblings looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Only my cousin Grace approached to give me a quick hug. "I'll call you tomorrow," she whispered. I needed to retrieve Lily's backpack from my mother's study where she had left it earlier. Entering the rarely accessible inner sanctum of my mother's private space, I spotted a folder on her desk labeled Estate Planning. It was open, with recently signed documents visible. A sticky note marked a section that caught my eye. Amendment. Exclusion of non-blood relation, Lily Walker, from all inheritance and trust provisions. My hands shaking, I took photos with my phone before grabbing Lily's backpack and leaving. That night, after getting Lily settled with hot chocolate and reassurances of how much we loved her, I made a decision. With Jason's full support, I sent one text message to my family attorney: handle them all. My phone immediately began lighting up with calls from my mother. 38 missed calls by midnight, followed by increasingly desperate text messages. "Please don't do this, Fanny. You're overreacting. We need to talk before you do something you'll regret." I replied only once. "You'd better start praying, Mother." The morning after Christmas found Lily still in bed well past her usual early rising time. I brought her favorite blueberry pancakes on a tray, sitting gently on the edge of her mattress. "You don't have to go to school today, if you don't feel up to it," I told her, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. She sat up slowly, her eyes puffy from crying. "Did Grandma Margaret ever want me?" The question pierced my heart. "Sweetie, sometimes adults have complicated feelings that have nothing to do with the wonderful person you are." "That's not really an answer," Lily said quietly, showing the perceptiveness that sometimes made me forget she was only 14. I sighed, struggling to find the right words. "My mother. She has very rigid ideas about family. But her limitations aren't your fault, and they certainly don't define who you are to us." Jason appeared in the doorway, his expression serious. "Your mother's been calling the house phone now." I didn't answer. "Good," I replied. "We're taking a day for ourselves. Maybe we could watch movies and make those Christmas cookies we didn't get to yesterday?" A small smile finally appeared on Lily's face. "Can we make the chocolate ones with peppermint?" By late afternoon, the house smelled of cookies and hot chocolate. The rhythmic actions of baking had calmed us all, creating a bubble of normalcy I desperately wanted to protect. That's when my phone rang with my sister Bethany's number. "I should take this," I told Jason, stepping into the home office. "Fanny," Bethany began, her voice strained. "I'm so sorry about what happened. Mom was out of line." "Out of line?" I repeated incredulously. "She publicly humiliated my daughter on Christmas and told her she wasn't family. That's a bit more than out of line, don't you think?" There was a long pause before Bethany spoke again. "There's something you should know. This wasn't. It wasn't just a bad moment. Mom's been saying things for years." My grip tightened on the phone. "What kinds of things?" "She tells everyone that Lily is temporary. That someday you'll come to your senses and focus on having real children of your own. She's been telling the extended family not to get too attached." I sank into my desk chair, feeling physically ill. "Who exactly has she been saying this to?" "Everyone, Fanny. Aunts, uncles, cousins." She even told Grandma Davis not to include Lily in her birthday cards anymore, because it created false expectations. My free hand curled into a fist. Why am I just hearing about this now? You know how Mom is, nobody wants to cross her. I should have told you sooner, but Parker and I needed her help with the down payment on our house, and her voice trailed off. You let her buy your silence while she emotionally abused my daughter, I stated flatly. It wasn't like that, Bethany protested weakly. It was exactly like that. And I'm guessing you're calling now because you've heard I've contacted my lawyer. Another pause. What are you planning to do? Whatever it takes to protect my daughter, I answered before ending the call. I sat motionless, trying to process this new information. How much had Lily experienced without telling me? How many small cruelties had I missed? The next morning, I was sorting through old family photos when Lily sat down beside me. Are these from when you were little? She asked, pointing to a picture of me around age 10, standing beside a Christmas tree with my siblings. Yes, that's at Grandma and Grandpa Harrington's house, the same one we went to yesterday. Lily studied the photo quietly before asking, Can I tell you something? But promise you won't get super upset? My heart sank. Of course, honey. You can tell me anything. She took a deep breath. Grandma Margaret has always been different with me, not just yesterday. Different how? I asked, though I was beginning to fear I knew the answer. Little things. Like how she always remembers to send birthday cards to Katie and Zach, she said, referring to my brother's twins, but says mine must have gotten lost in the mail. Or how she always tells me about family trips after everyone's already gone. What family trips? I asked, confused. The ones to the lake house every summer. She'd show me pictures of everyone there and say it was too bad I couldn't come because there wasn't enough room. I stared at her in disbelief. Lily, we were never told about any lake house trips. Lily's eyes widened. Really? She said you knew but decided I should stay with my friends here instead. My mind raced. What else had my mother done? Slowly, more details emerged as Lily finally unburdened herself of years of subtle exclusions and small hurts she'd kept hidden to keep the peace. Birthday checks that supposedly had been sent but never arrived. Family events she'd allegedly been invited to but we had declined. Gifts from relatives that my mother claimed to have delivered but never did. The depth of the deception was staggering. Later that afternoon, a package arrived from my cousin Grace. Inside was a family photo album with a note. I thought you should see these. I'm so sorry I never realized what was happening. The album contained photos of numerous family gatherings over the years that Jason, Lily, and I had never been invited to. Summer barbecues, Thanksgiving dinners, even a family trip to Disney World that my mother had organized for all the grandchildren 2 years ago. All the grandchildren except Lily. In one photo, my mother stood surrounded by my nieces and nephews, wearing a custom shirt that read Proud Grandma of 5. At that time, including Lily, there had been 6 grandchildren. The systematic exclusion was so deliberate, so calculated, that I found myself shaking with rage. My phone pinged with an email notification from Grace, who had forwarded me an invitation from last year to my cousin Heather's wedding. Check the recipients, Grace's message read. There, in the forwarded chain, was evidence that my mother had been included in the original invitation list, with a note specifically mentioning Lily was welcome. In a separate email my mother had sent back, she had written, Fanny's family will unfortunately not be able to attend. Please do not send them a separate invitation, as Fanny is dealing with some behavioral issues with her adopted child and doesn't need the added stress. We had never been told about the wedding at all. 3 days after Christmas, my brother Thomas showed up unannounced at our front door. His expression was grave as I invited him in. I'm not here to defend her, were his first words as he took a seat in our living room. What Mom did was inexcusable. Jason crossed his arms. Then why are you here, Thomas? My brother ran a hand through his thinning hair. Because there's more you should know, and I can't live with myself if I don't tell you. Thomas had always been the peacemaker in the family, the one who smoothed over conflicts and maintained relationships. To see him here, clearly agitated, sent a chill through me. Do you remember when you first told us you were planning to adopt Lily? He asked. I nodded. Mom was horrible about it. She tried to talk me out of it for weeks. What you don't know is what she did after you left that day. Thomas leaned forward. She called a family meeting without you. She told us all that this adoption was a phase you were going through, that you felt guilty about Diana's death and were making an impulsive decision. My stomach twisted. A phase? I went through months of home studies and legal procedures. She asked us all to go along with it, to pretend to support you but not to encourage this path. She said eventually you'd realize your mistake and would need a way to gracefully exit the situation. Exit the situation? Jason repeated incredulously. We're talking about a child, not a bad investment. Thomas couldn't meet our eyes. There's something else. The family trust that Grandpa Harrington set up for all the grandchildren's education? Mom's been manipulating it for years. My father's father had established a substantial trust fund, specifically earmarked for his grandchildren's education. Each grandchild was supposed to receive an equal share upon turning 18, or when enrolling in higher education. What do you mean, manipulating it? I asked. After Dad died and Mom became the trustee, she created a separate account. She's been diverting what would have been Lily's portion to supplement the others. I felt the blood drain from my face. That's illegal. The trust stipulates equal distribution to all grandchildren. Thomas nodded grimly. I only found out because I'm on the financial review committee at the bank that manages the trust. A junior associate flagged some irregularities, and the file came across my desk. He pulled out a folder from his briefcase and spread several documents on the coffee table. The amount started small, but over the past 10 years, she's diverted nearly $180,000 that should have been held for Lily. I stared at the numbers, feeling physically ill. All this time, she's been stealing from my daughter. Technically, she classified Lily as ineligible under the blood descendant clause. But Grandpa's actual language in the trust included legally adopted grandchildren, specifically because Aunt Patricia had adopted cousins, Megan and Drew. Does Bethany know about this? I asked. Thomas's uncomfortable expression told me everything. She might have suspected. Mom has been giving her advances against her kids' portions for their private school. After Thomas left, Jason and I spent hours going through the financial documents. The diversion of funds was only the beginning. My mother had also set up college accounts for all the grandchildren except Lily, making annual contributions that parents were told about but we never were. There's a pattern here beyond just money, Jason said as we organized our findings. Your mother has been systematically erasing Lily from the family narrative. The next day, I received a call from Paula Winters, an old family friend who had served on charity boards with my mother for years. Fanny, I heard about what happened at Christmas, and there's something you should know, Paula said, her usually confident voice hesitant. Your mother has been telling people for years that Lily has serious behavioral problems. What? I gasped. She's been saying that you keep Lily out of family events because she's unstable from her difficult background. That's why I was so surprised when I finally met her at the hospital fundraiser last spring. She was nothing like how your mother described her. The more I dug, the worse it got. Another bombshell dropped when I received a call from Emily Lawson, a social worker who had been involved in Lily's adoption case. I probably shouldn't be telling you this, Emily said. But with everything that's happening, you deserve to know. During your adoption process, someone made an anonymous report to Child Services, suggesting you were pursuing adoption for the wrong reasons and might be an unfit guardian. My heart raced. Did they determine who made the report? It was never officially confirmed, but the reporter knew details about your financial situation and family history that were highly specific. The investigation found nothing concerning, which is why the adoption proceeded. I thanked Emily and hung up, my hands shaking. The pieces were falling into place. My mother hadn't just rejected Lily. She had actively tried to prevent me from adopting her in the first place. With growing dread, I contacted the attorney who had handled Lily's adoption. After some hesitation, he confirmed my suspicions. There had been an unusual legal challenge during the process from a distant relative of Diana's who suddenly expressed interest in taking custody, despite having never been part of Diana's life. The claim was withdrawn suddenly, the attorney explained. I always thought it was strange how they appeared out of nowhere and then disappeared just as quickly. Would you happen to have the contact information for this relative? I asked. 2 days later, I was sitting in a coffee shop across from Carly Davis, Diana's second cousin, whom I had never met during all the years of my friendship with Diana. I only met Diana a few times at family reunions when we were kids, Carly explained. So I was surprised when I got a call from a woman named Margaret Harrington about 4 years ago. My blood ran cold. What did she want? She said her daughter was trying to adopt Diana's child for the wrong reasons. She offered to pay all my legal fees if I would file for custody instead. Carly looked down at her coffee cup. I was young and needed the money, so I agreed to meet with her lawyer. But when I realized what was really happening, that she just wanted to prevent you from adopting Lily, I backed out. The depth of my mother's deception was staggering. She had been working against Lily from the very beginning, using every resource at her disposal to undermine the adoption and, when that failed, to systematically exclude Lily from the family. A week after Christmas, I arranged to meet my mother at a neutral location, a private room at my attorney Sarah Williams' office. I was done with phone calls and text messages. This needed to happen face to face. When my mother arrived, she wasn't alone. Following closely behind her was Gerald Matthews, her personal attorney for the past 20 years. I had expected this, and was grateful for Sarah's presence beside me. "This is unnecessary, Fanny," my mother said as she took a seat, looking immaculate as always in her camel hair coat and pearl earrings. "We could have discussed this privately, as a family." "We're long past that point," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "And given what I've discovered, I thought legal representation was appropriate." My mother's eyes narrowed slightly, the only indication that she was concerned about what I might know. "I'm aware of what you've done, Mother. The trust fund diversions, the lies about Lily to the family, the systematic exclusion from family events, your interference with the adoption process." A flicker of surprise crossed her face before she composed herself. "I don't know what you're talking about. If you're referring to the trust, I've simply been following your grandfather's wishes regarding blood relations." Sarah calmly opened a folder. "Actually, Mrs. Harrington, the trust explicitly includes legally adopted grandchildren. We have the original documents here, which your father, law's attorney, has verified." My mother glanced at Gerald, who looked uncomfortable. "This is a simple misunderstanding that can be rectified." "A misunderstanding?" I repeated, my voice rising despite my best efforts. "You've been stealing from my daughter for 10 years. You tried to sabotage her adoption. You've been poisoning our entire family against her." "I've only ever wanted what's best for the family bloodline," my mother said, her voice hardening. "The Harrington name stands for something in this community. Surely you can understand wanting to protect that legacy. And what exactly was Lily threatening? She's a child who needed a home and a family." "She's not a Harrington," my mother said dismissively. "She never will be, regardless of legal papers." The naked prejudice in her voice shocked me into momentary silence. Even Gerald looked uncomfortable with her statement. "Mrs. Harrington," Sarah interjected smoothly, "I should inform you that what you've done with the trust funds constitutes fraud. Additionally, interfering with an adoption process by making false reports to child services is a serious offense." My mother's posture stiffened. "I'm sure we can come to some arrangement. A financial settlement, perhaps. Something to ensure this stays within the family." "You think you can buy your way out of this?" I asked incredulously. "Everyone has a price, Fanny. Name yours." She opened her designer purse and withdrew a checkbook with an air of someone accustomed to solving problems with money. "This isn't about money. This is about years of cruelty toward an innocent child. My daughter." My mother's expression hardened. "She's not your daughter. She's someone you took in out of misplaced guilt. And I'm not the only one who thinks so." "What does that mean?" "Did you ever wonder why Diana's family never contested the adoption? Why they were so willing to let their blood relative be raised by strangers?" A chill ran through me. Diana's parents were already deceased. She had no siblings. But she had extended family. Cousins, aunts, uncles. I've been in touch with several of them over the years. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. "You've been contacting Diana's family? Why?" A thin smile spread across my mother's face. Insurance, in case this day ever came. There are people with actual blood ties to that girl who might have legal standing to challenge your adoption, especially given your complicated personal history. She was referring to the brief period after college, when I had struggled with anxiety and depression following my father's death. A vulnerability she was now threatening to weaponize against me. "Are you actually threatening to try to take Lily away from me?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm simply pointing out that legal battles can become messy and public. Your interior design business is finally gaining traction. Would your wealthy clients appreciate knowing their designer is embroiled in a sordid family dispute? That she has a history of emotional instability?" Sarah placed a restraining hand on my arm as I half rose from my chair. "Mrs. Harrington," she said firmly, "let me be clear. Any attempt to interfere with my client's legal parental rights would constitute harassment and potentially criminal behavior. Furthermore, making false statements to child services is a prosecutable offense." My mother waved a dismissive hand. "Prove it was me." "We can and we will if necessary," Sarah replied. "Additionally, the misappropriation of trust funds is thoroughly documented. The trustees will be very interested in this information." For the first time, Gerald leaned forward to whisper something in my mother's ear. Her face tightened as she listened. "I think we're done here for today," she finally said, rising to her feet. "Gerald will be in touch to discuss terms." She gathered her belongings with deliberate calm. "Fanny, don't do something you'll regret. Family matters should stay within the family." As she reached the door, I found my voice again. "You're the one who decided Lily wasn't family, Mother. Now you get to live with the consequences of that decision." After they left, I collapsed back in my chair, emotionally drained. "She's never going to admit she was wrong, is she?" Sarah squeezed my shoulder. "People like your mother rarely do. But we have solid evidence of financial impropriety, at the very least." As I was leaving the building, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was from Amanda, my mother's personal assistant for the past 3 years. "Check your email," the message read. "I can't be part of this anymore." In my inbox was an email containing audio files recordings of my mother speaking to various people about Lily and me. In one particularly damning clip, she was talking to the wife of one of my biggest interior design clients, describing Lily as troubled and me as unstable since taking in that girl. Another clip captured her instructing Amanda to cancel an invitation that had been sent to Lily for a charity event honoring young volunteers, despite Lily having completed the required community service hours. The most shocking recording was a conversation with someone identified only as P.I. Jenkins discussing the need to find usable information about the birth mother that could demonstrate unsuitability in the bloodline. My mother hadn't just rejected Lily. She had been actively working to destroy her place in our family and in the community for years. The day after my confrontation with my mother, I met with Emma Reynolds, an attorney specializing in adoption law. Sarah had recommended her as one of the best in the state. "Based on what you've told me and the evidence you've gathered, there are several actionable issues here," Emma explained, after reviewing my documents. "The financial diversion from the trust is the most straightforward legal violation. The attempts to interfere with the adoption process and the ongoing harassment are more complex, but still potentially actionable." "What would you recommend?" I asked, Jason's supportive hand on my shoulder. "First, secure Lily's position. We should file for a formal accounting of the trust and demand restoration of the diverted funds with interest. Second, we need to document everything, every instance of exclusion, every disparaging comment, every interference. The recordings are particularly valuable evidence." She leaned forward, her expression serious. "But before we proceed, I need to ask, what's your goal here? Financial restitution? Legal consequences for your mother? Or something else?" It was a question Jason and I had discussed extensively the night before. What did justice look like in this situation? "I want 3 things," I said firmly. "First, I want financial restitution, not for me, but for Lily's future. Second, I want acknowledgement of the wrong that was done, and a genuine apology. Third, I want assurance this will never happen again to Lily or any other adopted child in our family." Emma nodded. Those are reasonable goals. The financial aspect is straightforward. The acknowledgement and apology will be more challenging, given what you've told me about your mother. The third goal is the most abstract, but perhaps the most important in the long term. That evening, we held a family meeting with Lily. Though she was only 14, we believed she deserved to have a voice in decisions that affected her life so profoundly. We've discovered that Grandma Margaret has been doing some very inappropriate things regarding your place in the family, I began carefully. Like saying I'm not really part of the family? Lily asked quietly. Yes, and unfortunately more than that. She's been keeping money that was meant for your education, and she's been telling lies about you to other family members. Lily absorbed this information with remarkable composure. Is that why I never get invited to the cousins' birthday parties anymore? My heart broke all over again. Yes, sweetheart. None of that was your fault, or our choice. What happens now? She asked. Jason and I exchanged glances. That partly depends on what you want, he said. We can take legal action to get back the money that should be yours. We can demand apologies. Or we can simply cut ties with that part of the family and move forward. Lily considered this seriously. I don't care about the money, but I don't want her to keep turning everyone against me either. Her voice trembled slightly. I don't want to cause a big family fight, but I also don't want to pretend everything's okay when it's not. You're not causing anything, I assured her. The choices Grandma Margaret made are what caused this situation. Can I think about it? Lily asked. Of course, there's no rush to decide. Over the next few days, I began reaching out to family members I thought might be sympathetic, or at least open to hearing the truth. My cousin Grace was the first to fully ally with us, having already sent the photo album evidence. I always felt something was off with how Aunt Margaret talked about Lily, but I never imagined it was this systematic, Grace said when we met for coffee. And you're certain about the trust fund? Completely certain. Thomas confirmed it, and we have the documentation. Grace shook her head in disbelief. Count me in for whatever you need. This isn't right. My brother Thomas, despite his initial reluctance to get involved, provided crucial support by connecting me with 2 other trustees of the family foundation who had grown concerned about my mother's management over the years. It's not just about Lily, he admitted when we spoke privately. Mom's been getting more controlling and manipulative across the board. The foundation board has been questioning some of her decisions regarding grant allocations. This piqued my interest. What kind of decisions? She's been steering money toward certain projects while blocking others, often against the board's recommendations. There's a pattern. Further investigation revealed something truly hypocritical. My mother's charitable foundation, which publicly championed children's causes, had been systematically excluding programs supporting adopted children and foster families. Even worse, the foundation's promotional materials often featured photos of adopted children from beneficiary organizations, while the actual funding went elsewhere. She's been using these children's images for publicity while actively undermining support for them, I told Jason. Disgusted by the discovery, my network of allies continued to grow. My sister Bethany, after initial hesitation, finally admitted she'd been uncomfortable with our mother's behavior for years, but had been financially dependent on her support. Parker lost his job last year, she confessed. Mom paid our mortgage for 6 months, but the price was that we had to go along with her narrative about family events. Most surprising was the support from Audrey Davis, my mother's oldest friend and fellow charity board member. Audrey requested a private meeting at her home, away from my mother's extensive social network. Margaret has changed over the years, Audrey said, serving tea in her sunroom. She's become obsessed with bloodlines and legacy in a way that's troubling. I've tried to speak to her about it, especially regarding Lily, but she dismisses any criticism. Have you noticed this pattern extending beyond my daughter? I asked. Audrey nodded gravely. The foundation has rejected several worthy programs, specifically because they support non-traditional families. Last year, she blocked a substantial grant to an exceptional foster care program because, in her words, it undermines traditional family structures. This broader pattern provided context for my mother's treatment of Lily, but made it no less painful. What had shaped her into someone so coldly prejudiced against children who needed homes? Another shock came from my business partner, Natalie, who called me in for an urgent meeting at our design studio. "I didn't want to add to your stress," she began, "but you need to know this. Your mother contacted 3 of our biggest clients last month, suggesting they should reconsider working with our firm due to your personal instability and family issues that might affect project timelines." I sat heavily in my office chair. She tried to sabotage the business too? Fortunately, the Millers have known you for years and called me immediately. The Richardsons were concerned, but agreed to meet with me to discuss it. I haven't heard from the Johnsons yet. This attack on my livelihood represented a new level of vindictiveness. It also confirmed that my mother had no intention of resolving this conflict amicably. The final and most stunning discovery came when my cousin Heather visited, bringing a box of family memorabilia she'd inherited from our grandmother. "I found this while going through Grandma's papers," she said, handing me a small leather-bound book. "I think you should see it." It was my mother's diary from when she was in college. I hesitated to read someone's private thoughts, but given everything that had happened, I felt justified. What I found inside shed new light on my mother's prejudice. The diary revealed that my mother had harbored a lifelong antipathy toward adoption and outsiders in the family. Several entries referenced her opposition to my Aunt Patricia's adoption of my cousins Megan and Drew decades ago. Other passages expressed disdain for diluting family bloodlines and pretending strangers are relatives. One particularly disturbing entry described her reaction to learning that a college friend had been adopted. "Found out today that Jennifer was adopted. Can't look at her the same way now. How can you ever really know someone who doesn't know their own blood? There's something unnatural about it." The diary painted a picture of a woman whose prejudice ran deep and had been firmly entrenched long before Lily came into our lives. This wasn't just about Lily or me. It was about a fundamental belief system that had poisoned my mother's ability to accept anyone she deemed an outsider. Armed with this knowledge and supported by a growing coalition of family members and community figures, I was ready to confront my mother one final time, not just for Lily, but for every child she had ever marginalized through her influence and power. 3 weeks after Christmas, a large package arrived at our home, addressed to Lily. Inside was an expensive designer handbag and a note from my mother. "For my granddaughter. Let's put this unfortunate misunderstanding behind us. Love, Grandma Margaret." Lily stared at the gift, then handed the note to me without a word. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of wrongdoing, just an expensive gesture meant to buy silence and compliance. "What do you want to do with it?" I asked her. Lily considered for a moment. "Send it back. It's not a real gift if it comes with conditions." Her maturity continued to amaze me. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. A real grandma would love me for who I am, not what name I was born with." Jason repackaged the handbag while I wrote a simple note. "Lily respectfully declines your gift. When you're ready to offer a sincere apology, we're willing to listen." Days later, formal invitations arrived for the Westbrook Children's Foundation annual gala, where my mother was scheduled to receive a humanitarian award for her tireless dedication to children's causes. Under normal circumstances, our family would attend to support her, sitting at a prominent table near the stage. This year was different. The day after the invitations arrived, I received a call from my mother. "I expect you to decline the gala invitation," she said without preamble. "This is an important night for me and for the foundation." "Hello to you too, Mother," I replied calmly. "Why would we decline?" "Don't be deliberately obtuse, Fanny. You know why. I won't have my evening ruined by family drama." "By family drama, you mean the consequences of your actions coming to light?" Her voice hardened. "I'm warning you. If you attempt to make a scene at the gala, you'll regret it. I still have connections that can affect your business, your standing in the community, and yes, even your precious adoption." The threat hung in the air between us. "Are you actually threatening my family right now?" "I'm being practical. Sometimes difficult decisions must be made for the greater good of the family name." After ending the call, I contacted Sarah, Emma, and our growing coalition of allies. The time for private negotiations was over. My mother had made it clear she had no intention of making amends or even acknowledging wrongdoing. Over the next week, we gathered all our evidence. The financial records showing trust fund diversions, the recordings of my mother disparaging Lily to clients and community members, documentation of her interference in the adoption process, testimony from family members about her systematic campaign to exclude Lily, and the foundation records showing discriminatory grant practices. The night of the gala arrived a glittering affair at the Westbrook Country Club with the city's elite in attendance. Despite my mother's warning, Jason, Lily, and I attended, along with Thomas, Grace, and several other family members who had chosen to stand with us. My mother's face tightened when she saw us enter, but she maintained her composed socialite smile as she worked the room. We took our seats at a table near the back, waiting for the right moment. Midway through the evening, just before my mother was to receive her award, Thomas approached me with an expression of shock. "You're not going to believe what I just found out," he said, his voice low. "I was talking to Dad's cousin William about all this. He mentioned that there was always a strange dynamic between Mom and Grandma Dorothy." "What do you mean?" "He said there were rumors in the family for years that Mom was actually adopted herself. I thought he was joking, but he was serious. He said Grandma Dorothy had health problems and wasn't supposed to be able to have children. Then suddenly Mom appeared when they were in their 40s. I stared at him. That can't be true. Mom has always been obsessed with the Harrington bloodline. That's just it. William thinks that's why she's so fixated on it. He suggested we look at Grandma and Grandpa's papers from that time. There might be adoption records." The revelation was staggering. Could my mother's lifelong prejudice against adoption stem from her own unacknowledged status as an adopted child? Had she built her entire identity around a bloodline that wasn't biologically hers? A quick call to Heather confirmed that there were more of our grandparents' papers in storage. She promised to look through them immediately. Meanwhile, the foundation chairman had taken the stage to introduce my mother as the evening's honoree. She ascended the steps in her designer gown, pearls gleaming under the spotlights, the very picture of charitable dignity. As applause filled the room, my phone buzzed with a text from Heather. "Found the papers. Birth certificate says adopted, with original name Margaret Ellen Brooks. Original birth date, May 17. Different from her official birthday. Have photos. Sending now." The pieces suddenly fell into place. My mother's obsession with bloodlines, her prejudice against adoption, her need to create a false narrative about our family history. She had been living a lie her entire life, rejecting in others what she couldn't accept in herself. As my mother began her acceptance speech about the Foundation's commitment to all children in need, I made my decision. I excused myself from our table and walked deliberately toward the stage, phone in hand. The Foundation chairman noticed me approaching and faltered slightly in his introduction. My mother's eyes locked with mine, a flash of panic crossing her face before she composed herself. I stepped up to the side of the stage and gestured to the chairman that I needed to speak with him. He leaned down, and I showed him the evidence on my phone, both the adoption records and the documentation of the Foundation's discriminatory practices. His face paled. He straightened up and whispered something to my mother, whose expression shifted from confident to cornered in an instant. What followed was a quiet but intense negotiation at the side of the stage, out of microphone range but visible to the puzzled audience. The chairman looking increasingly disturbed, my mother becoming more agitated, and me standing firm with evidence in hand. Finally, my mother stepped back to the microphone. "I apologize for the delay," she said, her voice slightly unsteady. "I've just been reminded of the true purpose of our Foundation's work to support all children, regardless of their circumstances or backgrounds. In fact, I'd like to announce a new initiative tonight focusing specifically on adoptive families and children awaiting permanent homes." She continued her speech with a strained smile, but the damage was done. She knew I knew her secret, and she knew I had the power to expose not only her hypocrisy, but her lifetime of lies about her own origins. After the gala, as guests were departing, I approached her in a quiet corner of the lobby. "We need to talk," I said simply. "Not here," she hissed, glancing around to ensure no one could overhear. "Tomorrow then, my lawyer's office. 10 a.m. Bring Gerald if you want." "This is blackmail," she whispered furiously. I shook my head. "No, Mother. This is accountability. You have a choice to make. You can begin making amends and acknowledge the truth, or you can continue living a lie while I pursue legal action for what you've done to Lily, and make your own adoption public in the process. You wouldn't dare. Try me. 10 years of systematic cruelty toward my daughter. Financial fraud. Interference with illegal adoption. Defamation. The list goes on. And now I understand why. Because you've spent your entire life running from the truth about yourself. For the first time in my memory, my mother looked genuinely afraid. Her carefully constructed identity was crumbling before her eyes. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Justice for Lily. A genuine apology. Financial restitution. And your resignation from the foundation, unless you commit to ending your discriminatory practices." I turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and Mother? Don't bother trying to call your contacts to pressure me. I've already secured statements from the board members about your mismanagement of foundation funds. Your influence isn't what it used to be." That night, as we drove home, I sent one final message to my lawyer: handle them all. Within hours, my mother's panicked calls began flooding in. 38 missed calls by midnight, followed by increasingly desperate text messages. "Please don't do this, Fanny. We can work something out. You're destroying our family. Think about what this will do to all of us." I replied with just one line: "You'd better start praying, Mother." The weeks following the gala transformed our family in ways I never could have imagined. My mother, faced with irrefutable evidence of both her deception and her own adoption, finally agreed to meet our terms. The first meeting was tense, held in the conference room at Sarah's law firm. My mother arrived looking uncharacteristically subdued, with Gerald and a therapist she had apparently begun seeing. "I'm prepared to make financial restitution," she began stiffly. "Gerald has calculated the trust amounts with interest." "This isn't just about money," I replied. "It's about acknowledging what you did to Lily, and why." My mother's hands trembled slightly as she clasped them on the table. I've had time to reflect on my actions. The therapist has helped me recognize certain patterns in my behavior. It wasn't the heartfelt apology I had hoped for, but it was a start. We established a series of conditions: full financial restitution to Lily's trust, formal apologies to Lily and the extended family, resignation from direct control of the foundation while remaining on the board, and mandatory counseling sessions, including family therapy, if Lily ever felt ready for it. "And there's one more thing," I added. "I want you to establish a foundation scholarship specifically for adopted children, named after Lily." My mother flinched, but nodded her agreement. The most difficult conversation was yet to come. Would Lily be willing to hear her grandmother's apology? After much discussion with her therapist, Lily agreed to a brief meeting, with both Jason and me present. "I don't expect you to forgive me," my mother told Lily, sitting awkwardly in our living room. "What I did was wrong. I let my own issues cloud my judgment about what family truly means." Lily listened quietly, her expression thoughtful beyond her years. When my mother finished speaking, Lily asked just one question: "Why did you hate me so much when you didn't even know me?" My mother seemed startled by the directness of the question. "I didn't. I don't hate you, Lily. I was afraid." "Afraid of what?" "Afraid of what you represented." My mother looked down at her hands. "I've spent my life defining myself by bloodlines and family legacy because I was terrified of facing the truth about my own origins." It was the most honest statement I had ever heard from my mother. "I don't forgive you yet," Lily said finally. "But maybe someday, if you really change." That mature response from my 14-year-old daughter brought tears to my eyes. In the months that followed, our extended family began a healing process. Some relationships were permanently altered, while others grew stronger through the crucible of truth. Thomas and I became closer than we had been since childhood, working together to reform the Family Foundation's approach to supporting all kinds of families. My mother's journey was the most surprising. Once her secret was acknowledged first within the family, and gradually among her closest friends, something in her seemed to crack open. The armor of perfectionism and social standing that had defined her for decades began to fall away. She started attending a support group for adult adoptees, confronting feelings she had suppressed her entire life. The woman who had once defined herself exclusively by the Harrington name slowly began to explore her own complex identity. Our interior design business not only survived but thrived as we shifted our focus toward creating spaces that reflected genuine family connections rather than status symbols. I began offering pro bono design services to adoption agencies, creating welcoming spaces for families meeting for the first time. Lily, always compassionate despite everything she had endured, suggested creating a peer support group for adopted children in wealthy communities. "Sometimes it's harder when everyone pretends money solves everything," she explained with wisdom that continually astonished me. The Christmas after that fateful holiday was deliberately different. We hosted a small gathering at our home, inviting only those who had stood by us and supported Lily throughout the ordeal. The celebration was modest compared to my mother's lavish affairs but filled with genuine warmth and acceptance. To my surprise, my mother asked if she could attend, arriving with a simple gift for Lily, a journal with a note that read, "For your thoughts and your truth, I'm learning from your courage." It wasn't perfect. Decades of damage couldn't be undone in a year. But as I watched my mother awkwardly attempt to connect with Lily over hot chocolate, I saw something I never thought possible. Two people beginning to see each other as they truly were, without the distorting lens of false expectations. The most profound change happened in me. I had always tried to maintain peace, to smooth over conflicts, to accept my mother's difficult personality for the sake of family harmony. Standing up to her not just for myself but for my daughter taught me that true harmony sometimes requires disruption, that peace without justice is merely silence. In the spring, Lily and I began volunteering together at the local adoption agency, helping families navigate the same journey we had traveled 10 years earlier. Watching her share her experiences with prospective adoptive parents filled me with a pride words can't express. "Family isn't about blood," Lily told one nervous couple. "It's about who stands by you when it would be easier to walk away." My mother, in her continuing therapy, finally confronted her own adoption story, eventually locating and meeting her birth mother, a 90-year-old woman, living in a nursing home, 2 states away. The meeting was difficult, but healing, answering questions that had shaped my mother's identity even when she refused to acknowledge them. "I spent my life running from who I really was," she confided during one of our cautiously friendly lunches. "I created a perfect fiction and then punished anyone who threatened it." "Including yourself," I observed. She nodded slowly. "Especially myself." The Lily Walker Scholarship Fund officially launched the following autumn, providing educational support specifically for adopted children. At the inaugural ceremony, my mother stood awkwardly at the podium and spoke words I never thought I'd hear from her. "Family is not defined by blood, but by love, commitment, and courage." I lost sight of that fundamental truth, and it cost me years with my granddaughter. Years I can never get back. This scholarship is a small step toward ensuring other families don't make the same mistakes I did. As I watched her speak, I realized that the most unexpected outcome of our family crisis was this. In fighting for my daughter's place in our family, I had inadvertently helped my mother find her own. The journey continues. Some wounds heal slowly, and trust, once broken, rebuilds in tiny increments. But the truth, however painful, has freed us all from living lives defined by secrets and pretense. If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that family is not a static thing defined by birth certificates or bloodlines. It's a choice we make every day to see each other, to stand up for each other, and sometimes to fight for each other when the world says we don't belong. What does family mean to you? Is it defined by blood, by legal documents, or by the people who stand by you when it matters most? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with others who might need to hear that family is what we make it, not what we're born into. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it brings some comfort to anyone navigating the complex waters of family relationships.